What's up, YouTube? Prof Sales coming at you with a very long-awaited video. I don't know if that's the right term, but it has been a while since I've made a video. So I'm going to let everybody kind of filter into the room and so on. This is a live show. So hopefully you guys are doing okay out there in YouTube land. Forgive me if this chair squeaks because it's like an old chair. So if you hear it squeak, I apologize, but is what it is. So I hope everybody's doing good out there. I know I've not been online for probably 2 or 3 weeks, I would guess. And the last video I made was about selling on Amazon and quitting and how difficult it is and so on. And I will address that, but I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about some book stuff that I was doing as of late. I thought it might be interesting for you to know. And I see a couple people filtering in the chat, so on. So I hope you guys can hear me okay. Let me know if you can or if you can't. I don't know if there's really anything I can do about it, but I'll do my best. Kitten Caboodle says, I've came here from Rake and Profit. Yep, Steve is a good guy and a friend of mine. What's up? Hope all is well. Yes, it is Atlanta Picker. I'm going to have some interesting news too. I'm not going to quite share that today, but stay tuned for that. Something I think a lot of you will find very interesting. But I wanted to start today talking a little bit about books. And, you know, this topic is about books, but honestly, it could be about really anything that you source, anything that you buy. Because you know, in the reselling game, there's a lot of people out there on YouTube. There's a lot of people in Facebook groups and so on. And we all have different feelings about what our time is worth, what makes sense to sell, given, you know, all of our individual constraints, our individual restrictions, I guess would be the right word. And this topic comes up with books, but it also comes up with others about, you know, what's your time worth? What should you spend your time doing in this game? And I wish I had all the answers to those questions, but I don't. And I don't know that anybody does. But I can share with you guys what I've learned with books. And I think it applies to a lot of other things that you'll go out and source as well in different numbers, right? I mean, it'll be different metrics, different ways of thinking about it. But ultimately, you've got to decide if selling something is worth it or not. And when we say worth it, I don't know what comes to your mind, but in my mind, it comes to this equation that we all kind of have in our head. And it goes something like this. Like, you want to sell items that you can source for as cheaply as possible, as quickly as possible, and will sell for the best price possible in the least amount of time. There's a lot of things that go into that, right? And, you know, some people will go out and source things and they'll say, well, I'm going to buy something for $50 and sell it for $200 because they're more interested in making, you know, $100 profit or $150 profit, which I get. Others want to do, you know, a quick flip volume game. I'm going to buy stuff for $1 and make $1 each one. I'm just going to sell a ton of them. Others are somewhere in between those ends of this, you know, 2 ends of the spectrum. I want to buy them for this much because I've only got this much capital. And then I want to flip them in this amount of time, roughly. And, you know, if you're listening to me right now and you're not thinking about what your time is worth, given the money you have to put in and how long it'll take to spend, you need to do that because that's important. I mean, we do that with a job, right? We decide there's a job opportunity and it pays X number of dollars and it has Y benefits and we've got to do Z work, whatever that is. And it's this schedule. I mean, you think about all these factors before you decide to take a job or if you decide to stay in a job, right? I mean, this is something most of us have done numerous times in our life. And reselling is no different. You've got to think about how much money is it going to cost? How much time is it going to take me to get it? Where am I going to get it? How much work will it be to list it or get it ready to sell? And then how quickly will it sell? And for what amount of profit? And how long? You know, how will it take? And there's a lot of different ways to look at all those variables, right? But books is a really good one because there's a couple major schools of thought in the book selling community, at least from what I've seen. And there's probably a lot of variations on these too. But basically, it goes something like this. You can buy a bunch of books really cheap, or even get them for free sometimes, right? Because people give away books. And you'll make $1, and you can make $1 on these books, and they'll sell quickly. Like, they're really good ranks. You'll have to process them all. You'll have to send them all into Amazon, label them, box them up, all that good stuff. But you'll flip through a bunch of them because they're good ranks. You don't make a lot on any one book. Maybe you only make $1. Maybe you make $2. It's not a lot of money, right? Especially after expenses. But that's kind of this quick flip model. And you see this to an extreme with really, really big booksellers on Amazon. And you'll know these guys because when you go on, you see their seller account, and you see that like they'll have like 500,000 ratings over the last 12 months, right? That's a big bookseller. I mean, they're selling tens of thousands of books a month. But that's one model, and it certainly works. I don't think anybody really debates it works. Another model is at the other end of the spectrum is, I don't want to sell a book unless I can make $5, $7, $9, $12, $15, whatever the profit amount is. Now, on average, there are fewer of those books out there. They are certainly out there. Don't get me wrong. But there are fewer of them, and you're going to have to go get them. You're not going to find as many, so you're not going to sell as many, which means you're not going to be selling as many books as the volume seller. But when they do sell, they're worth a lot more, right? This is all very common sense, but you'd be surprised how many people don't tend to get it. So I did, and I can't share my screen with you guys because YouTube has changed their algorithm just a bit or not their algorithm, but they've changed Google Hangouts. It's no longer as cool as it used to be, quite honestly. And I can't share my screen with you, but I keep some pretty good stats on what I sell and so on. And I've been keeping some stats on just like how what's the way to put this? How book selling is based on the type of location. Because what I do is, and I'll probably share this in another video, I will go in each day when I source books, for instance, and I'll say, okay, I went to this thrift store, I went to this library, I went to this book sale, I went to here, went to there, and I will record the results. I'll say, all right, and it's real simple. I don't take a lot of time with this, but all I basically record is I'm going to pop this chat out so I can see you guys because I had to shrink my screen down a little bit. I will, Land Shark says you can use StreamYard. So I will record my results and say, all right, so I went to this library. How many scans did I make while I was there? How many books did I find? And what was the cost of those books, right? Just basically 3 things. And I keep track of those as I go. And all the places that I go over and over and over, I've also, like, I'll call them a certain category. Like, this is a Goodwill, this is a library, this was a book sale, whatever. And I kind of keep track of like what my percentages have been, how much it's cost me per book at each of those locations. It's all just in a spreadsheet. So it's like once you put those 3 little data points in, it figures all that for you. So what does that got to do with book selling? Well, here's what I found is that when I look at my results, I wanted to, because this came up in a book selling Facebook group, because people were asking, somebody made a post about, and somebody watches this show, and now I can't think of their name, but they made a post about, I went to a book sale and I only found 18 books, but there was tons of people there who were just rolling up to the cash register with, 100 books or 150 books or whatever. They just had a whole, cart full of books. And their premise was, well, these people are just buying really low profit books, or else they don't know what they're doing. They just think you get a lot of volume in or a lot of inventory and it'll just magically make you money. Because this person wanted to have a higher profit per book. So they were kind of poo-pooing this model that, you should go and source a lot of books that make less profit. to hold out for the better books to make more profit, right? And some people were agreeing with them. Some people weren't agreeing with them. Everybody was chiming in on it. And I chimed in on it too and just said, you have a real opportunity cost here. Like when you go somewhere to source something, that means you can't be anywhere else, right? You can't be in 2 stores the same place. You can't be at 2 book sales the same place, 2 garage sales, wherever it is you source. You can only be in one place at one time looking at one set of potential inventory, which means you're saying no to all those other potentials. So there's a cost that you have when you set a profitable item down. Now, you may say that the cost of that is worth the time and energy it would take me to sell that item, but there is a cost, right? Even if you picked up an item that was only worth a penny in profit, right? Well, putting it down cost you a penny. Now, most of us would say, well, it was still worth it because I don't want to put the time and trouble into it to make a penny. And I agree with that. But at some point, as you go up to 2 pennies and 5 pennies and 10 pennies and 50 pennies and 100 pennies and 500 pennies, and at some point, the amount of money you're going to make makes sense to you given the risk of buying the item, the fact that you've already looked it up, that it's going to take this amount of time to sell, yada, 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 right? So what I do is I look at the categories of places that I go to buy books. And I was just looking at a couple potential sources. So here's what I found for my book sales that I've gone to. I've gone, since I started keeping these records, which was about 1.5 years ago, I've gone to 6 book sales, all right? And at those 6 book sales, I've scanned, and Karin's helped me with these too, so it's not just me, but she's helped me with this entire list actually. But we've scanned 12,850 books at those book sales, okay? We pulled 693 books, so basically 700 books, right? If we round up. That's a percentage of 5.4%, which is pretty good. 5.4 accept rate. So 6 book sales, found 700 books, scanned 12,850 books. To put that in comparison to thrift stores, because thrift stores made such a nice comparison for this. We've scanned 28,000 books at thrift stores. Now, we broke out a few individual thrift stores by their own category, like Savers and Half Price Books and Goodwill, but this is other thrift stores. Most of these are mom and pop thrift stores. So we scanned 28,000 books. We found 658, a few less than the books sales, which is only a 2.3% percentage pull. But here's what's interesting. You know how many thrift stores we've been to? 55. So we went to 6 book sales versus 55 thrift stores to get the same number of books, and it took us twice as many scans to do it. Now, why do I bring that up? Because if we put all the books on the sale that basically made the same amount of money as probably most of the thrift store books did, we would have missed on all that profit. Plus, we would have had to go to almost 10 times as many thrift stores to find those additional books. We're basically scanning around 500 books every time we go to a thrift store, roughly around that. And at book sales, we were scanning over 2,000. So we were scanning way more and getting a higher percentage at all the bookstores, at the book sales, than we were at the thrift stores. And it would have taken us 10 times as many thrift stores to find as many books as we found at the book sales. Think about how much time and energy it would take you to go to 10 times as many places as it does now. I mean, that's a lot of time. And every time, I've talked about this before, every time you drive somewhere, every time you drive home from that place, every time you spend time listing an item, putting that item in a box, sending to Amazon, or putting on your shelf if you're selling eBay, you're losing money. Like your hourly rate is dropping because you're putting in time, but no income's coming in. You're putting in time. You've also put in the expense of getting the item, but you put in the time. The time to go to those additional thrift stores is crazy. Just the drive time alone, I would estimate, I'm in a big metropolitan area and I've got a lot of stores within a day's drive of me. But even if I just stayed here locally in Charlotte, I would estimate going to a store and scanning the books and then checking out and coming home is at least a 45-minute process, maybe pushing an hour, but it's definitely 45 minutes. There's no way you're going to do it much less time than that in general. Because scanning 500 books, even if you have two people, is still going to take you 20 minutes or so. But just the time and energy to go to all those stores, and I'd have to go like to a ton because my acceptance rate was so low compared to the book sale. So I might not be the person at the book sale that's coming out with, cartloads of books, but we have gone to a book sale and pulled like 180 books because we set our triggers in a way that, hey, we're here at a book sale. There's good books here that will sell. They're good ranks. They meet all of our other criteria. Some of the profits is a little lower. But here's the thing, guys. Like if you're scanning an item and let's say you have your profit margin, your profit, minimum profit, say $3 per item, let's just say for argument's sake. Yes, you're going to get some $3 minimum profit items, but you're still going to capture the 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 10 and 12 and 15 and $20 profit items as well. It's not like you're going to not get those. You're just also going to get a lot, your overall average is going to be lower, but your volume is going to be much higher. And you're not having to put all those books back because you decided, well, I've got this arbitrary minimum number that's so high that I'm going to go to a book sale and only come out with 18 books. Like if we'd gone to 6 book sales and came out with 18 books, what's that, about 112 books or so total, I would be really disappointed because if you're going to tell me that you're going to put 20,000 books in front of me, right? And I'm only going to come out of there with 18, that doesn't seem very profitable to me because I still have to scan hundreds of books. I'm still going to see a bunch of books that are profitable, but I've set my profit level so low or so high, my profit threshold, that I'm just passing on book after book after book. And you could do this with like RA items. RA items for Amazon is a great example because think about this, guys. Think about if you had like a minimum profit per item, say $5, right? You don't want to pull an item that's worth less than $5 and bring it home and send it to Amazon. Okay, that's fine. But let's say you go to a store and you find an item that's only netting $3, but you find 10 of them and they're all good. It's a good ranking item. Like it's going to sell fairly quickly. That's $30 of profit that you would normally pass on if you held to your kind of, hey, it's not $5, so I can't buy this. That's crazy. Like listing and prepping and shipping in 30 items or 10 items doesn't take really that long a time compared to one item on Amazon FBA. So like on retail arbitrage and, or online arbitrage, those kinds of items, it makes even more sense. Like you could even start lowering that threshold down as you say, well, if I find it's $5 an item for one item, but if I find 2, I'll drop it to 4. If I find 3, I'll drop it to 3, whatever the number is, because it's so easy to still list that item. You could do that with an eBay listing too if you found 3 or 4 or 5 the same thing. Books are different. Books, you're not going to find usually multiple copies of the same book. But what you do pass on is what I just said. You're there and you scan 100 books. And while you might say, well, only one of these is meeting my $10 profit threshold, maybe there was 4 others that would make between $5 to $7 each. You just passed on $20 to $28 profit if you put those 4 books back, which doesn't really make any sense when you think about it because it's not that hard to. You've already scanned it. You already know it's good. Go ahead and pick it and send it in. Obviously, your capital and the time to sell the books is part of it, and that's something you've got to focus on. With your capital and your financial management, as well as your triggers and so on, to make sure that you're sourcing books that will sell in a reasonable time frame, whatever that is to you. But I just think a lot of people out there will pass on items but forgetting that there's a cost to you being in that spot at that moment, and there's a cost to you putting down a profitable item, no matter what the profit is, it's a cost because you've spent the time on it and you're not spending the time on some other items. So I don't know. I thought that was I think it's a good lesson to use in your business, just to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Like, I wouldn't say, hey, I will pick up anything I can make $1 on. I mean, that's crazy because some things just aren't worth it. But anytime that you can, have an opportunity to get a lot of inventory at one location, I think you should lower your profit requirements per item because you've got so many of those items in front of you, and you've compressed your time now down to a much more easily handled metric, because you're there and you're spending that time, but you're not having to go somewhere else and spend that time. So why not just shrink down that profit requirement and find the profits that's there, the good profit that's there. It's kind of like, a good plan today beats a perfect plan tomorrow. It's kind of like that sort of logic a little bit. But anyway, hopefully that was helpful. So I know we got a bunch of people in the chat and watching and so on. So thank you guys for showing up. And I'll kind of scroll through some of this. People are saying, Josh says, if you spend an hour each, 55 hours thrift, 6 hour sale. I'm not sure what you meant on that one, Josh. Maybe you can explain that comment. I'm not sure. Landshark says you can use StreamYard to stream. Oh, I haven't heard of that one, Landshark. I'll check it out. I was using OBS, but OBS, when the Mac updates their operating systems, it's caused OBS to flicker, the screens to flicker while you're using them. So not so good. So I really don't want to pay for Wirecast either. Wirecast is great, but it's kind of pricey. I think it's like $200, which, I don't know. That doesn't really seem that worth it to me. But let's see what else is here. Seth was in the house. What's up, Seth? Michelle, Aaron, Sue, all kinds of people. Atlanta Picker. Atlanta, do you know Sue? She lives near Atlanta. Speaking of Sue, she says, I love the higher ROI, but have to balance the lower quick sales to bring regular dollars. Yeah, the higher ROI, and what Sue's talking about there is like, what we're saying, you only hold out for the higher profit items. Those are great. However, when you're walking past a lot of medium ROI and even lower ROI that you can find in quantity, you're probably making, I thought about it this way. You only have so much time in your life, right? You don't know how much time you've got. None of us do. But you're only going to have so much time to earn income, however you do it, whether you're working somewhere, whether you're in a business, whatever. So one of your goals should be is to maximize the value of that time, given whatever situations occur, whatever opportunities come your way, whether it be a better job or career, whether it be in a business, whether it be sourcing like we're talking about. And I think that a lot of us get so caught up in the ROI or the profit per item or so on, we don't think about the time component, because time is finite. Like, you can get all the other things. You can source a more profitable item. You can hire people to help you with the efficiencies of your business, but you cannot get more time. That's it. Like, you've got your 168 hours a week, just like I do. So each hour you spend, you need to try to maximize the value of that hour if you can. Obviously, you have needs and you have goals with whatever you're doing, financial needs and goals that you have to meet. But there's a balance there that a lot of people forget, the time element. You can't just put endless time into it. This is why I talk about the whole working harder, working smarter, finding a better way to do it, because you can't just work harder forever. You can't just work harder and harder and harder. There's a limit to how hard you can work, and there's also a limit to how much time you can work. So eventually you have to figure out a way to maximize the value of those hours. You got to put in the hours, but you also have to find a way to maximize those hours, the value of them. So I think it's all, kind of keeping that balance. Don't forget the time component would be, I think, a good way to look at your business. What is your take on time versus capital in relationship to return versus profits? Yeah. And that's tying right into with that, what I was talking about, shaming. And that's a great question. And I think, I don't know, it's hard to put a number on that. Like I hear people say, I value my time at X, but I think the vast majority of people don't really know how much they're earning per hour invested. And I would be the first one to say that I'm guilty of doing that at times as well. Like not really knowing or thinking about, well, how much time is this really taking versus the return I'm getting? So what ends up happening is you get to the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, the end of the year, and you've got this amount of sales and profit and so on, and you're happy, or you're not happy, you're somewhere in the middle, but you really don't break it down to like, well, how many hours do I spend? Like how many people watching in this chat right now or watching this video later, by a show of hands, how many of you have journaled like the time you've spent on things for say like 30 days to kind of get a representative sample? I would venture most people haven't. And it's difficult to do that, but it's kind of eye-opening when you do, and it makes you more aware of how much time you're spending on things. And I think that in terms of the capital part, your capital is finite too, right? I mean, granted, you might be able to find more capital if you have someone who will invest in you. Some people get credit cards or loans, whatever. There's ways to do that in some cases, but your capital is finite as well. What I don't have a good number for you, to be honest with you, or a good way to like think about that probably. The only thing I would say is this. When you have money sitting on the sidelines, it's not only not earning you any return, it's also losing value due to inflation. So that's kind of the worst possible scenario, is if you're a reseller. Now, in some businesses, this would be smart. Maybe in some times of the year, maybe it's smart. But if you're a reseller and you have capital sitting on the sideline and you're not utilizing to go out and get more profitable inventory, you're losing, because that money is losing value and it's not gaining you anything. So that situation is always one that you need to be concerned about. Maybe you have an opportunity that's coming your way, so it's capital and reserve for that. Maybe you're buying for fourth quarter, you're saving for after a specific event and you think things will be marked down and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But again, every day that a dollar sits on the sideline is a day that that dollar can't help you. And in fact, it's hurting you in some ways because it's an opportunity cost, right? The dollar's just sitting there. It's not doing anything. It's not slated to do anything. And therefore, it's kind of it's an inefficient resource in your business. Just like if you list something and it doesn't sell for day after day, month after month, year after year, it's an inefficient resource. It's an inefficient piece of inventory that you need to do something with. You need to get that capital back out or liquidate it or whatever you got to do. So I think you always have to be looking for ways to get the capital back in action, no matter what the time component is. I don't know if I really answered your question, but I took a shot at it. Josh said you went to 55 stores, 55 hours. Book sales would be 6 hours. Yeah, agreed. That's probably reasonable. An hour per store. Some of those stores were in other cities, but you're driving around within the city for most of the day, and then you drive back home. I absolutely think I spent 55 hours in those going to those stores. If I put in the Goodwills and the Thrifts and the Savers and Half Price Books and other stores like that, those numbers aren't going to change much either. They're about the same, honestly, and they're about the same time component. I didn't add all those in because I have those broken out separately. I could do it. But I found you spend an hour per store nearly going to and getting and scanning and so on. If it has, say, like 500 books in it, and most thrift stores of any size will have 500 books that you would scan or at least have to go through. And then you throw in the time to check out, the time to park, the time to get in, put them in the car, just all those things add up, right? If you don't think that's accurate, go out and track your time for like a month and see and be brutally honest. Say, I left home at 10, 12 a.m. And I got back at 11:09 a.m. Like, don't even round up or down. Like, be very, very honest with it and see what your numbers come out to be. See if they're the same. Hello, Karin. Sending love and light to everyone. Just was thinking about getting an hour's work notebook time clock. Yeah, and there's some. There's great apps out there for that too. But you could probably just rig up your own thing. Honestly, probably just as simple. I think, and a lot of times. But I think a lot of us don't. I mean, I personally, granted, this is just an anecdotal. I personally have never met a reseller who journaled their time, or if they did, or they really tracked it. Like, they would track specific things they did to see how long it took, and I've done that. But like, literally journal their time over the course of, like, say, a month or two. If they have been doing that, that's great. They're just not really sharing it with the community, which is fine. They certainly don't have to. But I just think a lot of us don't, because it's just not how we're wired. Like, we kind of, part of the allure of being an entrepreneur is, you get up and you get to decide how your day goes. And the act of journaling and writing everything down almost seems like, you're not in control of that anymore, even though you are. But it almost seems that way sometimes, like you're now beholden to the schedule that you've created, and you don't like that because it's not what you signed up for, to be in business for yourself. But it's probably not a bad idea if you haven't done it, and you can see what your time is worth. Like, this would be my homework to you, if you will. The month of October is coming up, good a time as any. So, make a journal on your whatever you want to do it on, a notebook, computer, an app, whatever. And on each day, write down what you did business-wise and exactly how long it took. Like, don't cheat. Like, if you started something at 10 o'clock and it took you to 10:20, don't say 10:15. It took you 20 minutes. It didn't take you 15 minutes. And see what you come up with. Maybe, like, break it down in some categories. Like, all right, this is the time I spent sourcing. This is the time maybe I spent listing. This is the time I spent prepping and shipping. This is the time I spent checking sales. This is the time I spent driving to here, driving to there. These are how many items I got. That would be useful to know, and how much money you spent. I mean, you could figure out, if you tracked it for probably 2 or 3 months, how many places you go on average, how many, and maybe you're doing online too, but how many items you get, how much money you spent. And you could figure out, hey, if I want to, like, spend $1,000 next month or buy 100 items, this is how long it's going to take, roughly, right? Because you're going to know, because you've tracked it, and you know that this is the amount of time it takes you to, get this stuff done. And yeah, it's going to fluctuate. And yes, you're going to have random weird days where everything goes perfect and everything goes super smooth and you get it done, incredibly quick. And there's going to be other days where nothing goes right and then just everything takes forever. You just fail miserably. But you're looking for the average. You're looking to figure out, like, when Karin and I were selling on eBay, this came up not too long ago in a comment. We wanted to know how long it took us to quality control, photograph, list, and store a pair of jeans, because we were selling almost exclusively jeans on eBay. And it was an interesting experiment, because I didn't know, because I heard people throwing out numbers and I really didn't know if what they were saying was accurate or not. And we worked very, very hard on our systems. And by the end, we got it down to, from quality control to photograph to list and to put away in inventory, basically one pair of jeans every 5 minutes. So if we had, 12 pair of jeans sitting there, we could get those done in an hour. Now, caveat, that was her taking the photographs, me doing the listing, and we both kind of tag team quality control. And I think I was the one taking them up and putting them in storage. And we had templates. We were very knowledgeable about it. We took the same 5 or 6 photographs, I don't remember how many it was, on every pair of jeans. Like, we didn't change anything. We were doing it at the same place. We wrote the same type of listing descriptions and titles, the pricing I just kind of knew about the price range of most of the jeans, most brands and so on, unless it was something kind of unusual. And so we were able to replicate things over and over. She was dropping the photos to me, but 5 minutes a pair, even with two people working on it, it was basically 10 minutes with one person. Although I don't know that one person could keep up 10 minutes hour after hour. Like, you get tired when it's just you versus one, right? But we got it down. Like, that's as fast as I think we could have gone. Like, I don't think we could have shaved off much more time. And I don't think it was really worth it, because it's not like we were often going to be sitting there on a given day with hundreds of pairs of jeans over in the corner ready to be listed. I think the most we ever pulled in one shopping trip was about 315 over about a 36-hour period, which was nuts. But we were able to get through those, over the next 20 hours or whatever it worked out to be, which was good. So I think that if you do stuff like that in your business, like, it'll open your eyes to a lot of things. Maybe you'll find out that, like, what you're doing is not that efficient. Maybe you're finding out what you're doing is not really worth it to you. Maybe you'll find that what you're doing could be improved greatly, and you can look at some ideas for that. But if nothing else, you will learn. You will learn, and you will get better. You'll probably get better just by tracking it, because you'll realize, why am I doing it this way? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, this is backwards. Like, I should be doing this first, or do this way. Very valuable, especially if you're listing on eBay or Poshmark or some site like that, where it's a little more to it than it is on, say, Amazon. Because those inefficiencies add up, guys. Like, that's killing your hourly rate if you're just inefficient, and your hourly rate is going like this. Like it this way. If you were at a job and you were doing your job inefficiently for long enough, you may eventually get fired because, they'll train you, they'll correct you, they'll help you, say, hey, this is what we found to be, the best way. But if you're working at McDonald's and you decide to, put the burger on the bun first, and then take the bun back off and put the toppings on, they're going to tell you that's dumb. Like, that's not how we do it. That's inefficient. You're slowing down our time to get that delivered to our customer, right? Well, let's use a McDonald's example. But it's true, right? I mean, because they've come up with a system for, this is how we do it. We do it this way because we've tried 753 other ways, and we just didn't find them to be as efficient as this way. So, I mean, I think that there's always value in that, and taking a little time to do that over, do it over like a week or so, and you'll have a pretty good idea after a week. You could do the same thing with sourcing. I mean, you could say, this is, I normally hit these 20 stores in a month, but let me look at a map for a minute and really see, like, all right, this one runs this sale on these days. This one's not open on this day. What really makes sense to go to? Have you gone in with like MapQuest and routed it to show the best route to go between them? I mean, even if you saved, say you saved 30 minutes a week just because you found a better route, that's 2 hours a month you saved that you could do anything else with. And that pushes your hourly rate back up, right? Because now you're not spending those 2 hours. So just little things like that add up. And then, it becomes kind of like a game. Like, it's like, how efficient can I get this? With a lot of this stuff, especially if you're doing it over and over. Rob, what is up, my friend? Thank you so much for the super chat. Have not seen you in a while. Krillin asked, you go to estate sales yet? Hitting the bins. No, I have not been to a bins in, it's probably been a year. Maybe a year. I don't know if it's been a year. Maybe it was earlier this year. And I haven't been to estate sales, but I thought about going to a couple as of late, but I haven't yet. But thank you so much for the super chat. What else were people saying here? I probably missed I think I missed a comment or two. I find Marrakesh says, I find shoes easy to source, easy to scan the good ones at the thrift. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with shoes. We've sold shoes before. We just got a little tired of extra stuff that comes with shoes, like the cleaning and the prep and the photographs. But no, they're great. And they're definitely very profitable. As long as you have somewhere to store them and so on, which don't really take up that much room. But yeah, shoes are a great thing to source and sell. No doubt about it. Josh has taken the time challenge, the notebook in my center console. There you go. Let us know how it goes, Josh. It'll be interesting to see. You can send me a thing on Facebook if you want. SOPs are your friend. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and a lot of people don't have an SOP in reselling. Am I wrong about that? Maybe I am. But I feel like most people, and I've read this in numerous places, like if you can't document what you do, you really don't know what you do. And if you ever want to hire somebody or expand with, if you're going to need additional help, it's cool because you're going to bring this person in and you're going to expect them to kind of wing it like you are. And they have no idea what you're doing. So yeah, documenting your processes is always a good idea and very profitable. And a great way to find efficiencies, because sometimes what you write down, here's what's funny when you do this. Sometimes what you write down is not what you really do. So you're like, well, wait, is what I'm doing the best way, or is what I've written down the best way? So you'll figure that out if you start writing it down, like seeing it on paper, seeing it on a spreadsheet, a Word document, whatever you're doing on, that makes it real in a way that's much different than just having it in your head. And all good businesses that manufacture things, and make no doubt about it, guys, like as resellers, we're manufacturing sales in that we're taking a product through a pipeline, right? From acquisition to preparation to photographs sometimes to listing to prepping to shipping. We're taking a product through that process. And the best way we can do that is to make the process the same each time for the most part, make it very streamlined. The product might change, but how we treat it doesn't, is what's important. And when you see companies that, sell lots of things or move lots of things and so on, or deal with volume, that's how they do it. They're just doing it on a bigger scale. Like they're doing it the same way. They have a process for everything that might come up for the most part. But the vast majority of items that go through that process, it's the same thing every time, over and over and over. Because of that, they can get really, really efficient at it. Like I read a stat the other day heard a stat the other day that on Cyber Monday, Amazon sells 400 items a second. That is crazy to think about. Now think about if you had a business where you had to sell 400 items a second. What is that? 20? How many is that in a minute? 24,000 items a minute. How would you do it? Like your process, I know they're in different fulfillment centers and they got tens of thousands of employees, but man, you got to be super efficient to deal with that kind of volume. Like you can't be winging it to do that. And you think, well, I'm not selling 400 items a second, so I can wing it. You can, but ultimately, if you find a way to do things that are repeatable over and over and over, you'll get better at them. You'll speed up. You'll spend less time on them. So therefore, you increase your hourly rate on them, and you can go spend that time and do something else. Whether building your business or spending time with your family or whatever it is. So that's a win as well, right? That's just a win. It goes back to being at the book sale. Why do you walk away from profitable items that, while they might not meet right at your threshold, maybe they're slightly below, but now you got to go find an item over that threshold somewhere else. So now you've lost the time. You scan that book. You've also lost the profit on it. Maybe you'll find another book somewhere else that'll be profitable. Maybe you won't. Maybe it'll be a month from now. Who knows? But you're walking away from that profit when it's right there in front of you. So that was kind of the point of that illustration with the book sale. Sue tracks her most profitable stores in Inventory Lab. Yeah, that's the great thing about inventory software like Inventory Lab. It allows you to put in there suppliers. You can get really creative with SKUs. You can get creative with suppliers. I mean, you can do all kinds of things, honestly. And you can see, like, all right, I keep going to Target, we'll just say, over and over and over. Is Target making me any money? Well, I've gone to Target. You might have that somewhere else. I've gone to Target 30 times this year. And I've found, 300 items. And they've made me a profit of $3 a piece. Is that worth it? Maybe not. Maybe if they're $5 a piece, maybe it is. And then you think, well, is it because there's not good items at Target? Are there too many people on it? Am I not sourcing the right thing? Do I need to expand my categories? Whatever. Or do I just need to go somewhere else? But like, if you have the data, you can make that you can figure that out. you can look and say, oh, I don't know if it's worth it or not. So Inventory Lab is a great program for doing. There's other ones out there too. Have you started wholesale for your Amazon business? I have not. I don't know that I have any desire to do wholesale. Maybe one day, who knows? Maybe one day if I have the right situation, the right capital situation, and I decide to go off and go after it. There's nothing wrong with wholesale. It's a great business. It's tried and true. It's been around for a long, long time. It'll continue to be around, but I just haven't done it. And I don't know, maybe one day. Hundreds of pages of SOPs, Josh says. I've created one for eBay. Yeah. It's crazy how big it can get. And then you think, well, wait, do I really need to do all this? So that in alone can be like, all right, well, I wrote down my process and it's 37 steps. That seems like a lot. Maybe I can get that down to 25, whatever the situation is. Again, something you can learn if you write stuff down. It's really good. We only really did it to that in depth for jeans. And because they were so repeatable. And we got really good at them, I thought. I never have ran into anybody who did them any faster than we did. There were some people who were right there with us, but I had other resellers who tried it and private conversations and said, yeah, I'm around this. So I'm like, I think we're right there at kind of the edge of what's possible. I don't know if you can do it much faster than that. But it has other challenges, the jean business, as we all know. En route makes you a most efficient drive. Sue says, yeah, en route is I think I've used that one before. It's an app that allows you to put in multiple destinations and it'll tell you the best route. And I think it updates in real time too, Sue, if I'm not mistaken, so that if something changes on that route, it'll reroute you a different way. But it'll say, hey, if you want to go to these 10 different stores today, this is the best route. And when I do that in Charlotte, there was one time I did that. I was planning to go, I think it was about 8 different places, and I was going to go a certain route. And I put it in En Route or some app like that. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was En Route. And their route was literally 30 minutes quicker the way they took me. And I went, oh, I obviously don't know what I'm talking about, because they were taking into account traffic and road construction and, things like that. So absolutely, apps like that are definitely worth it if you can, if you're driving around a lot, especially in one area. But even if you're going somewhere else, actually, if you're going somewhere else, they're probably more value because you don't know your way around a foreign city as well, right? Or foreign area. Take another question or two. Then I'm gonna. Shamey says, how do you deal with IP violations for RA if they come up on Amazon? That's a good question. So basically the question is, what happens if someone makes a complaint that you're using, you're selling like a counterfeit product or intellectual property? Amazon will tell you can contact the IP claim owner, which sometimes that works. They'll remove it if you say, look, I bought these legitimately. I have receipts or invoices or whatever. But most of the time, I just take them down and don't sell that particular brand going forward. This is probably the wrong thing to say in the community, but I feel like with some of these brands, though, if you went back 6 months or a year later and tried to sell it again, they might not notice. I had a brand recently that I'd been selling for months, and then they just, whatever, said, oh, you're not allowed to. And I'm like, well, technically I am allowed to. There's a first sale doctrine, and these items were bought legitimately, but in the interest of avoiding conflict, I will take them down. And I've considered selling that item again down the road, and just, I don't know, because a lot of them, what happens is they'll see one, not even they see one, but like they get a wild hair and decide they don't want people selling their product. And they'll just send you an IP. They'll make an IP claim, and Amazon, will forward it on and say, look, this is restricted, blah, blah, blah. And if it's there's different ones. Like there's ones that come directly from the owner of the product, and then there's ones that come from Amazon itself. Ones that come from Amazon itself, you absolutely need to take it, take heed and deal with. But if they come from the brand owner itself, you've got a little more leeway. You can even give them to remove it sometimes, but I find a lot of them don't want to. They don't want to fool with it. They just want you to quit selling their product because you're not a distributor. Like this particular brand tried to say, per the retail agreement, you're not able to sell on the platform. And I'm going, I'm not a part of your retail agreement. Like I don't have to abide by an agreement that I'm not a part of. And they meant a retail agreement with me as a authorized reseller, and I was not an authorized reseller. It's kind of weird language. Like they didn't really understand what they were saying. Like they were just throwing out words hoping they would win. And I guess they did because I took it down. But ultimately they were trying to act like I was already a reseller for them and I was in violation of the agreement I'd agreed to, when in fact I was not one of their authorized resellers. And I just found the whole wording of it was bizarre. But anyway, I would probably just most of the time just take them down, move on, have them sent back to you, sell them on eBay, whatever other platform you want. Hey Cal Productions, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, says, do you think Goodwill and other thrift stores partnering with eBay and other reselling apps are a threat to our business? Do you think Goodwill and other thrift stores partnering with eBay? Well, I suppose this I've covered this topic before. Are they a threat? Possibly. Is it a big threat at this moment in time? I don't think so. And the reason why I say that is this. Organizations like Goodwill, for instance, get a tremendous amount of donations, right? They also buy some things and resell them too, but they'll buy like shelf pulls and pallets and things like that, but it depends on the Goodwill. The Goodwills are all regional. They're all under the corporate umbrella, but they're all ran regionally, and they all run their regions differently. There's not like one Goodwill policy for every store that they all tend to follow. And you'll see that if you go out to other areas, like they'll be different. They'll have different promotions, different pricing, all kinds of things. So they don't move in lockstep with each other, first of all. That's important to point out. Second of all, Goodwill's core business and these other thrift stores is not online. They're not set up to become, currently, they're not set up to be e-commerce players. Now, what I mean by that is, right now, from my understanding, the way these thrift stores like a Goodwill, they're selling online, they are having someone in the back, who they've trained to research and price items, and they're storing it somewhere in in these stores to sell these items. Then they got to pack and ship them. A lot of this is fulfilled by merchant, right? I don't know if they're doing the FBA or not. Maybe somebody in the chat will know. But let's assume for the moment it's fulfilled by merchant. So now they're taking on a whole nother business model. And quite frankly, from what I've seen, and I only have experience primarily with books, the Goodwills out there that are selling books are trying to sell as a volume game, like the big mega booksellers do on Amazon. These are like, the $5.33 books you see. And they're getting media mail shipping and so on. But here's what they don't understand. Those big volume booksellers that sell books down around those cheap prices like that are doing tremendous volume. And they've got systems in place and efficiencies, just like we talked about. Goodwill does not. They do not have all those systems in place. They do not have it, and they often don't even understand what they really have. Goodwill's pricing, I haven't been in one lately, but over the last 3 or 4 years, have been quite a few of them. Their pricing is crazy. Like there's no rhyme or reason to it in a lot of these stores. They elevate one brand, and while they put a much better brand right back on their regular rack at a regular price, and it's just bizarre. Their book pricing, they're trying to play the volume game, and it doesn't really make sense, because here's the problem. They're having to train and pay a worker to research this book, or just even throw it up at the same price, and then store it, and then pack and ship it. Like there's no way that's cost effective when you're selling books for $5.32. When you don't have systems in place and you don't have a way, to really maximize and squeeze out every penny you can. Now, that's in books. I know they're selling other items too, right? I know they have online presences. But I think it's not their core business. And I also think that their core business is brick and mortar driven. And a lot of the people that shop in brick and mortar Goodwills and thrift stores, it's not a majority, and I don't have numbers to back this up, but if I had to guess, the number of sales, the percentage of sales that are bought by, say, resellers, people like us in a Goodwill, I would guess is probably somewhere around 30%. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like that number's right only because of when I kind of look at the average number of units that a reseller is buying versus just a random shopper in the store who's buying a lot less units. If I went into a Goodwill, I might come out with 25 pair of jeans. If a regular person comes into Goodwill, they might come out with one pair of jeans, if anything. So I'm buying way more than the average person. But I still think that we're probably only maybe making up maybe 33%, 30%, maybe a third at most of their sales. But if they alienate us and they raise prices and they like across the board too much, resellers will go somewhere else. And there's no way Goodwill could afford to take a big hit, like a 1/3 revenue hit in their sales. Like that would probably be like if all the resellers tomorrow quit going to Goodwill, that's probably game over. Like there would be stores that would close because there's no way they'd make it. Like you can't just make up that volume. And you can't just lower prices to get it either because because here's the difference. If I walk into a Goodwill store, I could, especially when we were doing jeans, I could find 10, 15, 20 things I'm going to buy. The average person who walks into Goodwill, on average, probably buys less than one item per visit because they walk in sometimes and don't buy anything. Whereas every time I walked in, I pretty much bought something. So again, it goes back to if these thrift stores are trying to cater to, trying to become resellers per se, and not on e-commerce sites, and they push out resellers or at least severely limit us, I think it's a bad move. Like I think it will backfire on them because they need us. Whether they say they do or not, we are making up a chunk of their revenue. There's just no way we're not because there's just too many items that we're going to come in there and buy that others won't. And these stores like Goodwill, for instance, Goodwill is a decent sized footprint. It's a big store in Charlotte. I don't know about where you're at, but the stores here are decent size buildings, which means they come with decent size overhead. I mean, it's not cheap to run one of those stores, I'm sure. And on a per square foot basis, they have to do a decent amount of sales just to keep the doors open and keep paying people and keep the lights on and all that good stuff. So I just think that while online will be a part of their sales, I just don't know, no matter who they partner with, eBay or whoever, I think I haven't seen the actual eBay partnership and exactly what that entails, but I think it's one of those things where it's going to backfire and it's just not going to be that profitable for either entity because it's just not who they are. Goodwill is not set up to sell on e-commerce sites. They could go that route, but they would need to shrink their store footprint quite a bit to do that and be successful at it, in my opinion, because that overhead they have over there, they got a lot of real estate, and that overhead is huge. I don't know what their margins are to Goodwill, and everybody thinks it's probably massive because they get other things on donations. It's probably high ROI, but it's probably not that as high a profit dollar per item. And remember, guys, every time you touch an item, every time you put an item on a rack, every time you have to pick up an item that gets thrown on the floor, every time you ring up an item at the cash register, every time you put an item in a bag, somebody had to do that. Like you had to pay somebody an hourly rate to do that. So there's overhead to every single sale that goes in there, not to mention the overhead of the building. So I'm not as worried about as a lot of resellers I know probably are out there, but I guess we will see more on that. All right, guys, we've been on for like an hour. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I will post some helpful links and so on down in the description of this video that might help you out on your reselling journey. So I would appreciate if you check those out. They definitely help me and the channel out. And I will check with you guys not too long down the road. I'm going to try to be a little more regular with these, but hope you have a great rest of your Monday and take care.